West Ham United 0, Arsenal 1. That doesn't even scratch the surface of what we have just seen. Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Donaldson alongside Janusz Michallik. And in November 2018, the Premier League clubs voted to install VAR, which started the season 2019-20 and has continued in the top flight ever since. We have just seen its biggest decision. Now we have to decide, was it the correct decision? Arsenal are 1-0 up. We're deep into added time. West Ham think they have equalised. But then VAR, Dad in England, says to ref Chris Kavanagh, come and have a look at this. I think there is a foul on the goalkeeper. After a lengthy check, the referee agrees and chalks the goal off. The first question is a simple one to Janusz Michallik. Was it the correct decision?
Absolutely correct decision. If you look at Pablo, I mean, it's not just a question over the left arm, but I mean, he impeded Raya on both arms, right? Because that arm is across the chest and it affects his right hand and it affects his left hand, which almost got there, right? Anyway, his ability to jump as well. Of course, when we saw it in real time, I can't say honestly that I saw all of that, right? At first, in a situation like this, is you're looking at the goalkeeper not getting up there and all that traffic not getting there, and you thinking, my goodness, Raya should have had it. But, we do have VAR, as you've mentioned. And once I had to take a look, to me, it was a foul. No questions about it. There's a lot of traffic there. I'm sure you and everybody else is going to be picky what may have happened. But in a situation like this on a set piece, of course, there's probably 10, 11 little fouls or contacts that, if you're going to pick out, maybe, it's going to take us 3 days to go through this. But the bottom line, the only play that mattered for me was that one of Pablo on David Raya, and that to me is a foul.
There's a lot going on from the corner. Todibo has got a hold of the shirt of the goalkeeper. Rice is holding Mavropanos, but not necessarily within playing distance of the ball. The way that the process was gone through, were you okay with everything that they did? Do you think the officials got it spot on? You've said you think it's the correct decision. What about the process that led to the decision?
I think it was fine. I'm glad. VAR obviously has called the referee to take a look at it, and as I've mentioned, there's quite a few sticking points, but the most important one that affects that, the ability of David Raya to get to that ball was that one. Yes, I mean, if I look at Declan Rice and his hold of Mavropanos, that's usually, if that was the most important play on that one. I've seen those called as well. So I suppose that West Ham supporters and maybe some neutrals will look at that. But the only play that really truly matters in this one was David Raya, because if it wasn't for that arm across both arms of David Raya, not just one, take a look at that. It affects both arms and his ability to get up there. That to me is the key play on that.
Totally. Now, Arsenal fans will breathe a sigh of relief. For those who feel it's the wrong decision, how can they justify thinking it's the wrong decision and not just, oh, it's Arsenal, it's gone in their favour, that's a disgrace? Because I don't think the word disgrace appears in the law of the game.
Yeah, you just have to remove yourself from it all, right? If you're a supporter of Arsenal, West Ham, or anybody else, and look at the key play, because even if you think that there was a hold, which there was, right, on Declan Rice. I mean, that ball doesn't get there. If I think if David Raya has a play on that ball, he gets hold of it, and that's irrelevant, I suppose, right? So you can be picky, you can look at it all. But at some stage, we have to get to the mind of the referee and VAR, and they've decided that the key play in that was with the goalkeeper and Pablo. And I agree with that. That to me is a foul, and it's the right decision. It's an unfortunate one, of course, because we'll get to it. There's so much riding on this game at both ends of the table, right? So, to suffer like this, if you West Ham, after, oh, by the way, we'll get to it, they've played a very, very good game. They've had two marvelous chances. Mateus Fernandes, David Raya, tremendous save on him, and Callum Wilson blocked by Gabriel very, very late where they could have had and perhaps should have had an equalizer. So if you West Ham and you look at this game, it just makes you wonder, right? If West Ham played as organized, as well as they have in this game, they wouldn't have been in this position.
Before we get to the game, just quickly, I think it's very difficult to justify why that was not a foul. And that's the reason I asked you, what justification can West Ham, can Man City, can all the other teams that are affected by this have? And I don't think they have anything that they can stand up and look at the letter of the law and say that backs us up. For me, it's the correct decision as well. You're going to get argument. It's going to continue all game, because you'll say, oh, but there's fouls happen all the time. It's the severity of the foul. I think the referee there, if he doesn't give that as a foul, because VAR's already called it over, and we've seen this weekend up in Scotland, just because you get called over doesn't necessarily mean that the ref's going to take your decision. But you can't just suddenly say, oh, but this happened and that happened. You have to, I think you got it right. Look at this. It's clear that Pablo is fouling David Raya. And by the way, not only does he have his arm across his throat, he's also attached his left arm onto David Raya's arm. So you have to separate. I thought you got that spot on, Janusz. You have to separate this. You can't justify it and simply say, oh, but, and the whataboutery nature of, but we've seen this, that, and the other thing. It's a foul. And ultimately, yes, it's a huge decision. But if we are sitting here saying they've got the wrong decision or they didn't chalk that off, I think that's an even bigger story.
Yeah, I mean, people will talk about cause and effect. Very often we talk about the goalkeepers. They're privileged in a way, right? Especially in that 6-yard box area, right? When they go out, they got to be a little bit stronger sometimes. They have an advantage, right? Because they can get up there with their arms. And that's right. I mean, I've seen too many fouls or too much benefit of the doubt given to the goalkeeper. But this one here, I mean, I think that's clear. Of course, somebody out there will say, well, Pablo was Trossard, cause and effect, right? Was Trossard maybe pushing him a little bit for that arm? But I think, that arm is obviously out there. It's out there for many reasons. As a defender, it's a little bit for protection as well. But I mean, it's straight out there, right? I mean, he's leading with that arm, whatever happens. And you just said, not just the throw, but again, it didn't just, because in the end, it affects Raya's left arm, which was the closest to the ball, obviously, right? But the effect it has on the right arm as well, it prevents you from getting that jump, that little bit of a height in order to get there. So look, at some stage, we have to make a decision. The referee had to make a decision. Where is the key play on that? And the key play with everything else that happens in a situation like that, with chaos, pushing, shoving, trying to position yourself to be in the best position, obviously, to clear that for all players involved. The key play is there. And I don't think anything else surrounding that affected the decision, the outcome of that. So I think ultimately, as tough as it is, because it's, stoppage time and so much on the line, as I've mentioned, both VAR and the referee have made the right decision.
Join the conversation. Comment down below with your thoughts, especially if you didn't think it was a foul and why. And if you do, then other people can respond to that. Meanwhile, we'll get on with the rest of the game. You've already touched upon David Raya's save from Fernandes, and I mean, it's a game-changing save, isn't it? We've seen so many goalkeeping saves, one in the World Cup final with Kolo Muani, that you wondered, would it be a turning point? It's still 0-0 at the time when Mateus Fernandes is denied by David Raya. There's two moments in this game. This is one of them, and then Leandro Trossard, first goal in 25 games in the 83rd minute. That is the other one. It was quite a game. I thought West Ham were excellent. In that first half, they survived. Arsenal had loads of chances. But let's focus and individualize on these two moments of the game. First of all, David Raya's save. Fernandes waited too long or not?
No, it was so close. This is all to David Raya. I think he stood up there, right? Didn't go down early. Didn't give any indication, because I think when you this close, Mateus Nunes, obviously, I mean, probably really only looking at the far post at that stage. And when you're like that with the ball at your feet, you're hoping that maybe that maybe the goalkeeper will make a decision for you, meaning that it'll go down a little bit earlier or show it one way where there's that little bit of an opening. But I think Raya stood him up for as long as he possibly could, because he couldn't do any, it's almost, I think that Fernandez probably wished that he had another yard or two, meaning that he was back a little bit more, because then obviously he would have seen a lot more goals. So the closeness to it and the fact that David Raya stood him up for such a long time, didn't give away anything on that play, just shows how good of a goalkeeper he is, the best in the league.
They started to utilize Arsenal the right-hand side, and Bukayo Saka went off. He was subbed in the 80th minute. Madueke came on, but they started to kind of target the left-back area for West Ham. And just before they got their goal, there was another opportunity to deliver, which West Ham defended very well. But then the goal came in the 83rd minute. Odegaard finding Leandro Trossard. And I spoke about the right-hand side. Look at that. Look how many touches of the ball. Each little circle there with a number is a player who has touched the ball. They were patient, they got the job done, and it was a fine finish by Trossard, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think I'm going to summarize that, and because that's going to lead you to probably something that we'll talk about a little bit later, is that Mikel Arteta got it right in the end. Just because I think I was as confused as Mikel Arteta was with all his substitutions throughout the game. I was just as confused as the supporters, I'm sure Arsenal supporters, and the fans around the world in terms of what was happening. And the reason I say he got it right, because it was Odegaard that came in, and it did more in 15 minutes that he was on the pitch than any Arsenal player, if you put them all together, right? Because it was wonderful. Just before that, he had a great through ball as well. And this combination play, which started, I believe, with Declan Rice. I think there was a little bit of a 1-2, and then just a tremendous way of getting open. And of course, his pass finding Trossard, who in the last couple of games rediscover his form as well. So, fair play, because, I wasn't sure what Mikel Arteta was doing, although I'll explain probably what his thinking was at some time. It sort of made a lot of sense and didn't make sense. And in the end, it would probably be all about Mikel Arteta if they didn't find the winner in terms of his managing. And it wasn't going to be positive, but in the end, he found a way.
So the goal that West Ham thought that they had equalised with through Callum Wilson was chalked off in the 8th minute. This is when I want to play devil's advocate. And I think there's a bigger point here. You and I both agree that is a foul and the correct decision is made. But it's no surprise in the comments, there are a number of people, probably not Arsenal fans, who are saying, how many examples of Arsenal doing this at corners and no foul given? And that's perfectly fair to say that. The issue we seem to have is the inconsistency. Someone else saying, why was this goal given against Aston Villa? Someone else saying, yeah, this wasn't a foul against Manchester United. Arsenal score today, then concede, but the goal they concede doesn't count. You can't suddenly say, but whoa, they should have had that goal chalked off or that goal chalked off. Yeah, they probably should have done, but they didn't. But I totally get, playing devil's advocate, why so many fans are saying, hold on a minute here. This same thing happened in that game and in that game and in that game. That is an issue with consistency of decision.
Sure, but we can only say what's going on at present, at this moment.
We can, but you can understand the gripes.
You can understand that, and those are the examples of for everybody, right? That consistency. It's such a difficult call here. I mean, it's you can dissect that every which way possible. We've explained already that this is the key play, the most important play. Have Arsenal been guilty of that? They've scored many goals from set pieces, as we all know. And in that traffic, you have to be physical. You have to see how much you can get away with. Every team does it. Every player does it. I mean, I as a player have done it many times, knowing that It's either going to work or it isn't going to work, right? And I can understand the supporters of West Ham or maybe supporters of Manchester City who are, I'm sure, very much interested in all that outcome of this game as well. I get that, but then we probably have examples of that benefiting those supporters or those teams as well in the past. So yes, I do understand it. Yes, I am sure that Arsenal, I know that Arsenal have been guilty of things like that in the past, and you get away with it sometimes. Sometimes VAR or the referees are not strong enough to make a proper decision, because that's key. Today, VAR and the referee were strong enough to make that call, which again was the correct one for me today in the present.
I mentioned VAR was introduced in the Premier League in 2019. It wasn't the first league in Europe. They waited to see what the Bundesliga and other leagues were doing and then trying to iron out some of the deficiencies in it. Over the piece, including today, do you think VAR has been more of a help or a hindrance to both football and the viewing spectacle for supporters?
Yeah, as always, I'll say a little bit of both. I mean, it's never as clear as one way or the other, right? For so many years, we were hoping that we'd get a second look, right, before VR existed. I'll tell you from an example. I mean, there's still a league out there. I have a local league here, Mark, that you know very well, right? You commentate the games in the second division in United States. It's local to us. I go to these games. VR doesn't exist. Countless numbers of times when I sit in the stands and watch those games, I'm like wishing, oh my God, I wish there's a VAR. Impossible that this is a goal. Impossible this is a red card. Impossible, whatever else you want to say. I catch myself saying that. And maybe the day earlier, I've seen a bad decision from VAR, one that takes 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes to do it, and it slows down the game, and all the maybe inability to celebrate goals properly, because you always know it's going to take a little bit of time. So as always, it's 50-50 in a situation like this for me.
How do we resolve the inconsistency of decision-making when something like this happens in most games, but is called probably a quarter of the time, if that?
This stays this way. I don't think you can. You're talking about countless numbers of referees, countless numbers of people that work VAR in different, not just in the Premier League, but all over Europe, a big gray area in terms of how referees and VAR interprets some of the laws of the game, right? And it's happened, it's different everywhere. I mean, today we're talking about Premier League. It's different in La Liga. It's different altogether sometimes when you go to Europe and play in Europe. So yes, I hope that it's going to be at some point a little bit easier. I think you can redefine the laws of the game to be a little bit more universal and easier to maybe, get rid of the gray area. But yeah, I think it's, we're going to be here, Mark, you and I and everybody else from game to game in the future.
How did Arsenal play today, Janusz, with everything that was at stake?
Well, I mean, they froze, again, I mean, it's a massive game. It's going to be easy. We'll criticize Mikel Arteta and maybe some of the players today. But obviously the implications for both sides were absolutely massive as well. I thought they had a first half. I mean, the 3 chances that they had were unbelievable. I think they scored one of them, and I think the game is probably different. Calafiori, if you remember, one-on-one was blocked. I think that Trossard pass early on. Then Trossard, great header. Hermansen with a tremendous save initially, and then the follow-up from Trossard, if you remember, a header onto the crossbar. So the 2 chances on one play, and then there was the Calafiori's glancing header that was saved on the line, if I remember correctly, by Mavropanos as well. So in that first half, I think Arsenal had those chances, and they came close, right? But after that, I think, I think that the injury to Ben White complicated the game for Arsenal players, for us, for the supporters, because of Mikel Arteta. I can sort of understand it a little bit because, if you look at on the left-hand side of West Ham, they had a lot of joy over there, because I think both Diouf and Somerville caused problems to Ben White. And even when Declan Rice went on that right-hand side, which was questionable for me, even though he's played there. He continued to struggle there a little bit. And then, and I think that's why where Arsenal froze a little bit, not knowing what to do, how to play, how to find the rhythm, because of all these changes, right? Remember when that happened, Miles Lewis-Skelly went back to left back, and that didn't help Arsenal because he was very good in the first half in the center of the pitch. The reason he's played 3 games straight right now, because he's been very good in the center of the pitch, and removing him there caused problems. Now, you can say to Arteta, okay, that was first half still. He tried something, didn't work. What didn't work was obviously Zubimendi. There's a reason why he's been on the bench, because even when he came in, I mean, he was all over the shop. Again, I don't know 100%. We're live here. Ben White, that's an obvious injury. Then Zubimendi, I'm assuming it was tactical because, if there's an injury, that's an easy one. Arteta has to make that decision. It looked tactical, even if there wasn't an injury, because he didn't look good. And then all of a sudden, everything kind of came back to normal, especially with the introduction of Odegaard, who, I mean, as I said, within 15 minutes, changed the way Arsenal played on the positive side.
22 years ago, Arsenal won its last Premier League title. They didn't lose a single game that day. Patrick Vieira, the captain, lifting the trophy. They only conceded 26 goals in 38 games. Right now, they have conceded 26 goals in 36 games. Yes, they've lost 5, but they can win the same number of matches this season as they did the last time they won the Premier League. If they win their last 2 to guarantee the trophy, and that would be 26 wins. To go with 26 goals conceded, how big a part has this defence had to play in Arsenal's success so far?
Big. I mean, as you mentioned, they're at the top of the table, and I'm going to combine that a little bit with Mikel Arteta, because obviously, he's been questioned left, right, and center. And if Arsenal win this, I will have 0 questions for Mikel Arteta or Arsenal. Oh, by the way, I'm not an Arsenal fan, just in case you're wondering. But I have 0 questions because it would be absolutely deserved. You've mentioned Invincibles. That's not going to be that team, Mark, right? Our friend and former colleague, Robbie Earl, I don't know if you heard that, said it perfectly. Not to compare him to any other team because they deserve their own history. Not my words, as I said, Robbie Earl. I think he said it perfectly, because every team is a little bit different and makes 0 sense for me to compare them. But as you've mentioned, defensively, tremendous. Most wins in the league. Top of the table. I think 18 clean sheets so far. We all know how many set piece goals they've scored, which is a skill, by the way, right? It needs to be trained. It has been trained. It paid dividends, and many teams haven't done as well. Look at West Ham. I think they're the worst in the league as well. And this, in part, may be the reason they will go down as well. So you have to give him credit to that. On top of that, tremendous defensively, not only, but defensively in the Champions League. Won the league phase there as well. A plus 23 goal difference in the Champions League, better than PSG, not by much, I think, but better than that, and didn't concede in the playoff stages, less than just about everybody else put together. So when you look at the body of work where Arsenal are right now and how difficult it is to get to that place, it almost, as I've said, not as an Arsenal fan because I'm not, but I almost wish that this project gets through. And if it does get through, still 2 games left, then it is going to be absolutely deserved in my book.
That invincible season, I've given you the stats and the 26 goals conceded. 15 clean sheets for Arsenal that season. Today was the Gunners' 16th clean sheet. They're given an 87.5% chance to win the title. They should. They have 2 games left. Burnley at home. Burnley are already down. And Crystal Palace away. But let's delve deeper into that one. That's on the 24th of May. 3 days later, Crystal Palace are in the Conference League final against Rayo. There is absolutely no reason for Crystal Palace to play their first strength side. Arsenal aren't going to screw it up from here, Janusz, are they?
They shouldn't. They shouldn't. It's in their hands. And, with 2 games left, I think you'd love to have it, right? Because for many years, we've been talking about Arsenal not being able to take it to that final stage. The collapses, some collapses at this stage of the season or even earlier. I think they're in a position that they would love to be in if you gave it to them ahead of the season. As I've mentioned, it's in their hands. And you look at Manchester City, who have that same Palace midweek, right, coming up. But they also have Bournemouth away, right? And Bournemouth is surprisingly fighting for Champions League spots, and they may get it. There's all kinds of, Aston Villa will have a say in that as well. But Bournemouth by themselves are playing tremendous football, and City has to go away and deal with that. They have Villa at home, which is not going to be easy as well. And let's not forget that Chelsea has to play the final of the FA Cup against Chelsea. So look, I think if you're Arsenal supporter, after everything that happened today, you can smell it, right? You smell that, and again, if it does happen, if they see it through, Burnley, they should deal with them at home. Of course, Palace, yeah, that's going to be one that will make them nervous. But I am also nervous for Manchester City as well, given the games that I've told you.
Is there anything that you can argue against saying that Arsenal have been the best team over the course of this season's Premier League?
No, I gave you all the stats. I mean, it may not have been always beautiful. That's why we've talked about not comparing them to any other teams. This is a team, and you and I have talked about this a month ago, where I felt sure that Arsenal going to win it. I wasn't as comfortable, a little after our conversation a month ago, because the losses to Bournemouth, right? They've dropped some point. I mean, lost to Manchester City as well. They didn't look all that great at that moment. So I was getting nervous a little bit there, for sure. But no, because the season is always marked full of ups and downs. And yes, last month, I think Arsenal felt that pressure. They didn't play beautiful football. They were struggling, but ultimately in all of it, they kept finding a way. And as you've mentioned, when they didn't play well in terms of how it looked offensively, that defense and David Raya have kept him in games. They had to grind. How many teams don't have to grind throughout the season, when they win or not? That's just the nature of the game. And because so much is riding on that, because they've been close for so long, because this project has been now in progress for what? 6.5 years, when, you start with 2 8 places, a couple of times second, where you just can't get over that hump. They are so close, so much closer that they've ever been to. So if they do win it, you're going to look all the facts that I've said, not just in the Premier League, but in Europe as well. And that's not easy, playing such massive games. And the best teams have to do that. And they have to prove that they're good enough to get over that, right? Liverpool had to do it recently. Manchester City has done it for years. And the question mark is always, or has been for the last few years, next to the name of Arsenal. If they see it through, I don't see any justification for complaints.
And Mikel Arteta has never finished lower than he did the season before, when he's been Arsenal manager. The 14th title in the top flight is just around the corner. They can see the finishing line. They've still got to get there. Strange results happen. We've seen that in football. But I want to end where we started, Janusz, with not necessarily that specific VAR decision, when Darren England called referee Chris Kavanagh over and told him he felt there was a foul on the goalkeeper, David Raya. The referee agreed with the VAR and the goal was chalked off. Bigger picture, what is the answer to what we are seeing, especially this season, with all the jostling and all the chaos that goes on? IFAB has spent so long trying to figure out a handball decision and law, and they've pretty much made a mess of it. Is this something that they should be looking at to try and tidy up this chaos from a corner? or is it just not possible with the number of confrontations that take place at every set play?
Yeah, I don't think it's possible to always get it right. What I always hope for, that between the referee and the VAR, they find the right decision, that it is a clear and obvious mistake, right? And, I worry more about, referee seeing one thing and VAR seeing another thing, because we've seen that. And then, maybe overturning those decisions. That to me is the first thing that, referees and VAR all over the world gets it right, not just in the Premier League, because you're asking me, I think in general, not just in the Premier League. So to me, that is more important. That infuriates me a little bit more when VAR all of a sudden gets involved when probably they shouldn't, and maybe the referee made the right decision for us, and all of a sudden VAR is looking for something that it's sort of there, but it really is not a clear and obvious one. Today, to me, that was clear and obvious. And that's all I have to say. And as I said, in a massive game like this, you always feel a little bit extra in a situation where one team is fighting for the title and one, most likely, I'm not saying for sure, but most likely, because of this decision, is going to go down.
West Ham United 0, Arsenal 1. Don't know what the headlines are going to be in the back pages tomorrow, but don't be surprised if one of the tabloids just simply says Varsenal. Bye for now.